Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today at the Health Tech and AI Youth Rising edition. So, today we have a very exciting agenda coming up. We'll be starting with our keynote speaker with Kun Mishai, and then we'll have our youth-led panel, and we'll finish off with Q&A. We're hoping today to foster a conversation where we can really talk about the challenges that come with trying to scale innovations in global health and learning just as much from our failures as from our successes. So we're very pleased to have you here today. With that said, it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Kunmishai Waitaya, someone whose work has been nothing short of groundbreaking and incredibly influential in the way that we think about development and the work in Thailand. On a personal level, Kunmishai has long been a figure in my family who we've had the deepest respect, and I grew up going to his restaurant at Cabbages and Condoms, and I'm very so honored to have you here today. Kun Mishai has worked tirelessly to improve family planning, sexual health, and HIV prevention in Thailand, and his innovation took center stage as he founded the 100% condom program, which was a key factor in reducing Thailand's HIV infection rate by more than 80% between the early 90s and 2000s. Today, he's here to share with us his wisdom for our panelists and other youth leaders when thinking about what innovation really means and what we can learn from our failures and challenges as much as from our successes. Please join me in welcoming Kun Mishai.
สวัสดีครับ Can you hear me at the back? All right. Well, thank you for having me to join you today. And before I begin, I hope to be able to suggest to you that a lot of things are possible, but what we miss, we have good systems, good goods and services, but a delivery system that doesn't work. If you don't have a good delivery system, and we will show you that we need to bring in a new system and also be creative. So in other words, I'm just saying, harnessing everything at your disposal for change. In medicine, don't just stay with the doctors, with the nurses, with the midwives. There are other people who can help. And that's what we have been doing for the last 50 years here, and I hope to just demonstrate what we do. So we've had 5 journeys over the last 50 years. The organization is called the Population and Community Development Association. So the 5 journeys to improve the quality of life. First one is to reduce births, family planning. Second, to reduce deaths, HIV/AIDS. Third, to reduce financial dependence on others forever. And then the next one is to reduce poverty by working in partnership with people who know how to make money. Getting people who don't know how to make money, work with those who know how to make money. And then the final one is our cheerful revolution, bringing all these things together and expanding it as a new network. Okay. So our guiding principle is very simple. First one is be innovative. Think outside the box. Think outside the fence also. 2, take no as a question. Don't accept what politicians and leaders, prime ministers tell you not to do. If you have the right answer, keep on going. Next, find reliable allies. You cannot do it alone. You need allies and good allies, and you need to change allies over time, not the same allies, just like a pair of shoes. And then empower your target audience. If you're going to help those women in the villages, get those women in the villages to help you to deliver the goods and systems. So that's an example. And then finally, ensure sustainability. Those are the very simple things we've been doing. The first journey, reducing births. In 1970s, 7 children per family, very typical. This is a typical Thai woman. The husband's so tired making these kids, he's at home sleeping. So she's the one taking care. So eventually, after having to fight with the Prime Minister for 5 years, we got a policy passed. And when the policy passed, the Ministry of Health started doing it. The Thai women said, yes, we want to space our births. The government said, okay, let the doctors do it, just like every other advanced countries. Let the doctors do it. So we had one doctor per 100,000 women to receive contraceptives and everything else. So the Ministry of Education of Health decided to expand. So we got the nurses to do it with a checklist. Worked extremely well because woman to woman. And then the midwives. And all of this, from doctor to nurse to midwife, covered only 20% of the villages. We could have sat back and said, this is the medical area, we've done our best. That's not good enough. You have to go beyond that. The other 80%, so we asked the women, who would you like, would you accept to give you advice and supply you contraceptives? And the answer was local shopkeepers, usually the women. It was their choice. It wasn't our choice, it was their choice. And so we went to these shopkeepers and asked them, would they like to be trained to do this job? They said yes. They had supply system, they know about accounting. So we pioneered a community-based contraceptive distribution network by training village shopkeepers to supply our contraceptives and condoms and whatever else. And here's a typical shopkeeper. The yellow sign says Village Family Planning Center. Get your pills and condoms here, and also come for consultation for sterilization, IUDs, and so on at the local government health center. And you can see the red sign is Coca-Cola. We were much bigger than Coca-Cola 50 years ago here. And so eventually, 100% of the villages could be covered. You could get your pill in your village. Or if you want it free, you can walk to the local government health centers. But here, they could buy the pills, but at 1/4 of the market price. But if you couldn't afford it, you don't get it free. You can get it, but you must go and do community service. You're not a beggar. You have quality of life, and that is the goodness of your heart. Use that to get this. So this was the first time a country had launched a community-based contraceptive distribution in rural areas, and was later adopted by the Thai Ministry of Health. So they started off fighting with the Ministry of Health. Luckily, we had good doctors listening, and they agreed. They got bored, and then they agreed, and they saw the results. Said, okay, let's move with it. So as a result, these family planning volunteers started off in 1974, became known as village health volunteers, as we had now about 1 million of them adopted by the Ministry of Education. So wherever were the people, there's the family planning supplies in the floating market. So you have fish and crabs, contraceptives, bananas, even in hairdressers, and they came up with the idea that if you take the pill from me, I give you a 10% discount on the hairdo. New ideas coming up from, never come from us. And here's the dressmaker, same thing. She gives you a 10% discount on your dressmaking if you take the pills from her. So these things that came up from them didn't come with us the idea. We didn't have such good ideas. So I think it's important to say that we use both art and science. Here's an example. They wanted to plow their fields, so we said, we have buffalo rental for you to plow your field at half price if you practice family planning. This is known as a family planning buffalo. Half price. And then the other one said we had a very good pig breeder, and they bring their female pigs for breeding, and free of charge if you practice family planning, but you pay with one piglet otherwise. So it's just an example. And then there's a pig raising, non-pregnancy agricultural credit. They could borrow the money. So if you're not pregnant for the first year, you get 2 pigs to raise at a time, twice a year. Second year, 3 pigs, and the third year, 4 pigs. And a cooperative started. These ideas came from the women said, you can only borrow money if you're not pregnant, because if you're pregnant, you won't have time to do these things. This is a woman's perspective, not a doctor's perspective, not a PhD perspective, not a politician perspective. And then we wondered, what would Buddhism say about family planning? I asked the monks, they didn't know. So I got some scholars to go into the Buddha scripture and found about it. And because in the Philippines you have the Catholic Church that was strongly against family planning. And so here we found out very good support from Buddha in family planning. And so we printed on these prayer fans, many births cause suffering. It's in Thai, in Sanskrit, and we printed in English when temples where foreigners go. And we shot this, set all over Thailand to every temple. So everyone knew that Buddha supported family planning. And then the people in the villages said, look, at home we have a new motorcycle, a new room, we get monks to bless. Can you get the monks to bless contraceptives? So I came to the monk, this one, not so far from this place actually, almost next door, and I asked him, he said, yeah, I'll be happy to supply, bless your contraceptives with pills and condoms. So I am holding, I had hair then, I'm holding the whole bowl of holy water, and he's sprinkling the holy water on pills and condoms. And this picture was sent to all the villages, and some of the temples started doing the same thing. We never thought this was done, was never taught in university, it was not in international organizations, it came from the local people, and that matters. And then we said, now who else is in connection with a lot of parents? And that's teachers. So we work with the Teachers Council, and during the summer they have a special training course to upgrade their quality. So we brought the teachers in, we were able to train 320,000 rural school teachers in 5 years. And apart from explaining what family planning was, how they could influence the parents, influence the kids, and a new alphabet, a new family planning song. And we also had condom blowing championship to show you must not be embarrassed by the condom. If you're embarrassed by the condom, then you must be more embarrassed by the tennis ball. There's more rubber in it. And so that this started them laughing. And then we had a competition by the 4 regions of the country. The best 4 in each country, each region, was sent to Singapore for a prize, for a bit of a holiday. Again, making it fun and interesting. Add in development. Normally change is a disturbance in the socio-economic patterns of the lives of people. So it's important to go ahead and get them to participate and be gentle and be polite. Here's a family planning alphabet, and we're on snakes and ladders. If you land on a number that is anti-family planning, you're penalized. Anything pro, for instance, mother takes the pill every night. Very good mother, move ahead 5. Uncle buys condom. Very good uncle, move ahead. Uncle gets drunk, doesn't use condom. Come back, start again. And keep on going. And then when you get to 50 out of 100, father has vasectomy, go straight to win. So again, very simple policy getting down to the kids. And so the kids play the game, and they remember all of this, rather than sitting in a classroom listening to the teacher. They remember all of this because they want to win. And then we have a family planning song to sing after the national anthem. Every school, the kids sing the national anthem after 8 o'clock. And so we said, why not sing this song after the national anthem? So this song has about the problems of having too many children and so on and so forth. And all the contraceptive methods are in the song that the children sing. And see, and here it's getting the teachers to help us. And some of the teachers became distributors of contraceptives to the parents and to the villagers. So all of a sudden, who would have thought school teachers could be used to supply oral contraceptive? They didn't think of it, but it's done. It can be done anywhere, in any country. And relay races using condom with water. Anything that gets involved, and had condom blowing championships by the students as well. And then as a result, after these years, 7 kids, now today it's 1.5, 1.2. And growth rate is now 0.2, below that. So these are the things that happen by combining so many things in. Not just doctor, it was doctor, nurses, midwives, politicians, teachers, even policemen giving out condoms in traffic. We call that our Cops and Rubbers program. And then HIV/AIDS came along in the 1980s. Government reaction? Denial. We cannot have any information because it would destroy tourism. So media coverage was totally prohibited. This is the government. So we can bow our head to the government. No, we never do it if you're talking about the truth. And so we went to somebody above the government, and that is Commander-in-Chief of the Army, and explained to him that about 14% men of recruitment, military recruitment age, were already infected from the north and slightly less from the northeast and so on. And so you're going to have many, many people infected into the army. That's not going to be very good. So he said, what can I do? I said, please lend me 300 radio stations of the military and 2 television networks. And we gave them the television spots and radio spots, which was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. And the company that produced it was almost free. So we had very good cooperation from everybody involved. And so using the army, and who would remember that it was the army who introduced AIDS prevention in Thailand, not the doctor. And then soon after that, we had a new prime minister, regarded as probably the best prime minister Thailand's ever had, Kunanan Pranyachun, and he asked me to join his cabinet and to be minister of the office of the prime minister, taking care of communications, tourism, sports, and a few other things. And also, and the zoo. And all of a sudden, there's a 50-fold increase in budget for prevention, and the prime minister became the chairman of the National AIDS Committee. This is total war. You can't use a minister of health. Minister of health is not very strong. So we need the prime minister. And we got everyone involved, the Ministry of Education, Justice, and all the businesses committee to join the AIDS committee. And here is, I was in charge of broadcasting and communications, and we got all the radio stations, video, radio stations, television, newspaper network to come in for training on AIDS, HIV/AIDS. Be correct, do not scare. And so that they would say that HIV is HIV, HIV is not AIDS, and all the issues of misunderstanding was cleared. And we gave them half a minute extra education for advertising, because they had to do half a minute of spot, AIDS education spot, every hour broadcast. Every hour they had to do that. And so basically we use private ideas through the government. Don't have to have government ideas all the time. Then we've got companies to start joining in. We said, sick staff don't work and dead customers don't buy. You educate your staff, educate your customers, and they pay for it themselves. Here's an example. These are some of the cards, what we call them Safe 80 tips. On one side is a company advertisement of Canada. On the other side is issues about HIV/AIDS. And it's given out usually with a condom. Then we went to the universities and said, all the universities, we want you to go back to your secondary school. We train you first, and you go back and train your younger brothers and sisters about HIV/AIDS. And here you've got the brothers and sisters being taught secondary, upper secondary training, lower secondary also, and then training primary school kids. And on one particular day, every primary school student with a packet of condoms and HIV/AIDS information was given out to every household by primary school students. Look at all these things, nothing to do with typical health system, but we knew everything because it was total war. You have to realize that you're fighting total war and fight it as if it's a total war. And so that in Bangkok, condoms everywhere, in shopping malls and banks. I was one time chairman of a bank, and all the banks joined in, said, just walk in, and we gave it, and all to the customers of the bank, to the staff of the bank, on the SkyTrain, at nightclubs. Also, we had the Captain Condom. He has a Harvard MBA. It's probably the best thing he's ever done with his MBA. And going to bars, giving out, and schools, giving out condoms, AIDS information. Because they're the first line of people who are in trouble. So we said, we want to save you. So this was done. And we call them, these are condom nights. And then condoms given out at gas stations. The companies join in. So when you buy gasoline, you get condoms also. If you fill the whole tank, you get a whole box, 144 pieces. And also bus stops. Wherever there's a bus stop, you get condoms given out, and AIDS information together with the condoms. And the toll condoms available everywhere. This is the toll booths. When you go through the toll booth, you get a condom. You can try this in any country. And then in taxis, also supply condoms in taxis. Some people said, you take me to the hotspot, Patpong, and they said, hey, you better use a condom. I supply condoms in the taxi. Why not? And also in Bangkok traffic, we get policemen to join in giving out condoms. We call this our Cops and Rubbers program. Again, everyone join in. There's nobody who cannot join in. As a result, between these 2 years, UNAIDS said HIV infections declined by 90%, and according to the World Bank, 7.7 million lives had been saved. And this number became, in 2017, it became 10 million. Imagine the cost of inaction had I listened to the stupid minister in the government. You don't have to insult them, but you have to go around them. Get somebody more powerful. There's always somebody more powerful than you. Go around them. And then the other one is to reducing poverty by partnering. Don't partnering with an organization that doesn't know how to make money. Don't partner with the government. Government doesn't know how to take money, doesn't know how to make money, only knows how to take money. So we go to companies who have money and business skills. And so they empower the community and to turn the poor into entrepreneurs. And the money comes from the company, the money comes from the company in exchange for trees. Every tree, $3. And so if you 10,000 trees, you get $30,000. So you get the trees planted, and you get the 30,000, which was used to establish a microcredit loan fund. So the donor got two things: the trees which increased in value over time, and the microcredit loan fund, which also increased over time. And then again, to fund, again, no handout. So here's what we call the Village Development Bank. Half of them had to be women. They were elected, and you'd put a deposit in. You earn 3% interest per year, and you borrow at 1% per month. And so these are the things that people did from borrowing the flowers rather than handout. You have to pay and repay. And these are flowers made from fish scales, which were exported. Also, these are crab meat processing and cold storage. They were exploited by merchants who would come at the end of the day, and if you didn't sell it to them at that price, it would rot. So we're able to get them cold storage. So forget about the middleman exploiting them. These are very simple things in development. Don't hand out free. Help them to make themselves better. And also, here's another one in straw mushroom. They were exploited by the middlemen who would buy at the end of the day, and the value would go down. Again, with their own cold storage, no problem. Very simple, nothing big. And also growing of flowers. Many, many things. I'm just giving you just a few examples. And here's a particularly good one. This village bank became fairly large, and they said, we can do something with the money. So they decided that they could make a water bottling plant, and it was checked, and FDA checked it. It was very high quality. And so they started producing water and selling amongst the villages themselves at a cheaper price than the competitor. But what happened? I said, here's a woman who's in charge. We have found that many of the good ideas came from women, not from the men. But they didn't get in the way. They were very obedient. And here's something we did not imagine. Village water sellers. They all of a sudden decided there was a need, there was demand for you to deliver the water to their own homes. So then they earn money. All of a sudden, there's a trader of water. Again, thinking of how to do it, and the villagers will join you. This is not our idea. This is so many of the things I've told you about came from them. And the fourth one is financial dependence. Having businesses such as the loan fund in the villages, which became a microcredit loan fund, and we had many other activities, but I would jump over this because of time constraint. So by establishing social enterprises to do, and the profits can be used for social, for activities in the villages. So you can have your own villages bank, or you can have restaurants. We have restaurants, we have hotels to earn money. But I skip over that. The fifth one is the cheerful revolution in rural education, taking education a step further, regarding the school as a place where you can do more than just educate goods. It can be a place whereby establishing the bamboo school, and here is what the school structure. Why can't a school look attractive like this? Why can't a school be colorful like this? And it is growing vegetable on gravel. All of a sudden it's a lesson even just at the entrance of the school. And it's very, very colorful. So it's a school to foster future change makers and social entrepreneurs, not to just go through regular school system. By make the school a lifelong learning center for all members, the people, whatever you want to learn, come tell us, we'll try and find you a teacher. So that the school becomes a gateway for social and economic advancement in the surrounding community. Why can't we use it? Thailand has 30,000 schools. We're not using it at all before this. So students help to manage the school. 6 years in secondary education, they're all boarders, and they can learn a lot. So there's a student government, they're in charge of many, many things. Here's the meeting of the student government, and here's student government presenting activities to the minister, deputy prime minister of the school. When visitors come, no teachers around, it's the students. And music welcome for guests, so the school has it. They do all purchases. No purchase done by the teacher. Everything, from food to paper to motorcycle to vehicle, everything is done by the student. They have to learn that. And there's also an audit committee. This is going to check prices, whether how it's competitive it is. And we have also an audit committee, just like any company. And so if new students want to come in, they are interviewed and selected by existing students from the student government, not by teachers. They interview the parents as well. And if a teacher wants a job, first the written exam, second oral exam, then final one is to show how good you are teaching, selected by the students. So why can't you select your own cook if you want good food? Same thing. And so everyone must sit in a wheelchair for 1 day per month to learn about empathy, because we don't learn about empathy in school. We totally ignore the realities of disadvantaged people. And we also don't eat on a Saturday evening to learn about hunger. You cannot learn about hunger from a book, from a video. You have to be hungry. And also here is how to grow vegetables on very poor soil and make it colorful by using little land, little water, and little labor. And here is mushroom growing, which earns a lot of money, done by the students. If you compare it with growing rice, 1 square meter of growing rice in Thailand, you earn 5 baht. But the mushroom in 1 square meter will earn 6,000 baht. If the microgreen from sunflower, 13,000 baht for 1 square meter. And with bean sprouts, it's 24,000 baht per 1 square meter. Why do you spend so much time on rice? So again, just take a look at what you can grow. And say, here's a high income, the bean sprout, this will earn you 24,000 baht per year for 1 square meter. And then this is the hydroponics, this is a high return, done by a student. The system also set up by a student, established and run by students. Melon from plastic bags, grapes. And this is the only school I know of in the world where students learn how to make water jars. 2 cubic meter of water jars, 2 tons of water. And we hope to get some sponsorship from people. And then it's delivered to the elderly people in the villages as a gift. So the students did this. And also we have tissue culture, which is normally spent in secondary and universities at grade 4th year. But here we do it for grade 7. All the high tech can be done right at the school. But we have to wait till 4th year university. So many things should be brought down from the university to secondary school. And we also learn sign language from deaf students. And in return, we teach them agriculture and help to find money to have their own farm. Also help the tissue culture lab in the schools, deaf school. Deaf people are very good with their eyes. And then also learning how to grow vegetable from a wheelchair. So it's a wheelchair vegetable. This was designed by grade 10 students, not by university. And so we help other schools that with kids with with difficulties in life to grow vegetables, also mushrooms, hydroponics. And here parents pay students and student pay school fees, 400 hours of community service and 400 hours, 400 trees each. And so here they're going out to teach primary school kids dental hygiene, schooling, cooking food to give to patients in hospitals, and playing music for them. Again, this is their community service. And they get to see many, many things. And so we've decided that the Bamboo School is a lifelong learning center, and to make sure that elderly people can make use of it, we provide training and loan funds for them to raise income through vegetable growing and other services, and students are helping community members to generate income. And so that we want schools to be a country club for the elderly. And here's a partnership between youth and elderly people. Elderly, growing vegetables, and here the school, from the school to the community, the farms in the villages. So we've helped 220 schools, 240 schools, and here are some of the schools that we've helped to establish their farm. So 240 schools funded by the private sector, and growing vegetables on cement, and also they're selling it. And also in the south, all these schools, wheelchair-bound students, proud melon growers. These are grade 3 students. Prime Minister visiting the school, explained by the students. And now we're finally doing it with the temple, growing vegetable, using temple land to grow vegetables for elderly people. And now they have accommodation now inside the temple for lonely elderly people. And these are the table that run away, escape from floodwaters, and you don't have to bend. And so here the people coming in to buy vegetables from the temple. The temple's very colorful, all done by the elderly people, bringing them back into productivity. They earn now 1,500 baht a month compared to the government pension of 600 baht, 2 to 4 times more. It's just a very simple example, not using government money at all. And so here the people being involved, they're very much involved in agriculture now. And they're very happy, with the project activities. They're not lonely anymore, and they're having a great time. Now here's the elderly housing. Students are helping to build. And here's the building, 2 to a room, and with a very nice bathroom, and also nursing coming in once a week. When the abbot asks, nobody refuses. So the nurses come to help with help. Now we're training the elderly to do more on health themselves. And food income in the hospitals, also elderly people who are sick, also learn how to grow vegetables. And also we grow vegetables at home. And so here's the bean sprouts. And the doctor at the top left, very happy you can learn how to grow vegetables at the hospital, as well as buy vegetables and sell vegetables. And so it has been covered by the BBC and PBS on the activities in the villages, the elderly food and so on. So, and a lot of other countries have come and take a look, and we're very happy. We help with Cambodia also. So the final one is the homeward bound. Prisoners who are released from jail have one of the most difficult times in life. So we train them before they go home with our students, and they go home. So here our students helping to develop a system, and now helping to put in a system of vegetable growing into the home of the prisoners who've been released. And so the people in the villages are very happy because these ex-prisoners are now demonstrating and teaching you how to grow vegetables and earn good income. Again, here is turning some liability into an asset. And so the family members are very, very happy. Again, this is probably one of the most important things we can do for people at the end of the line. And so I believe then the final one is the new partners. The Bamboo School has now other schools, temples, district hospitals, health centers, village health volunteers, teenage mothers, and then prisons. So here's a whole network to deliver what if you have not just AI alone. You need a delivery system of people, very simple form. So that's in a nutshell, I think I've just want to finally just say, anything can be done through the school. This is the SDGs, all can be done through the school, to the community. All things. And so here's the SDG from the UN, and we said 17 is not enough. We've been doing more. We said, you need 4 more. 4 more. 1, empathy and sharing. We need people to share. There are lots of people who have and have to share, not just money, but skills. 2, rule of law, obey traffic rules as an example. Honesty, no corruption. If we don't get rid of corruption, we'll not get rid of poverty. And then finally, family security. Take care of your own family. Don't expect the government to take care of your family. And then this is what the UN said about the Bamboo School. The Bamboo School is one of the world's most innovative schools. I hope they won't change their mind. And I think that is the last slide. So please visit the Bamboo School. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Kunmi Shai for a wonderful speech. We really appreciate your time. We're now breaking into the youth-led panel of this part of the session. I'm very excited here to be joined with a couple of great panelists. So in person here, we have Kelly, Per, and Saad. And actually online, and I think the team is setting it up right now, we have with us Shadrach, who unfortunately could not join due to last-minute visa complications, but who is up at 2 a.m. So thank you very much, Shadrach, for joining. I think we're just getting you on the screen now.
Yeah.
Great. So as we said earlier, today we really want to foster a conversation around not only the successes of our ventures, but also the learnings that can become from our failures and from the challenges that we face. Very excited to get to share all of the folks here and the different unique experiences that we have. So why don't we go ahead and get started with introductions. I can start. I'm Mai Mai. I was born and raised in Thailand. I spent the past decade working abroad in the US and Europe. I have both private and public sector experience. So from the private sector side, I've been working a lot in the US in launching digital health equity solutions, as well as looking at femtech through Silicon Valley. And currently I'm working with the World Health Organization out of Geneva. And so I'm very interested in thinking about how, when we talk about technology, when we talk about innovation, how do we really leverage this for communities in the Global South? Kelly, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks so much, Mai. Hi, everyone. Sawadee ka. My name is Kelly. I'm Thai American. I grew up, spent the first 18 years of my life in northern Thailand in Chiang Mai, and went to school in the US, spent the last decade or so doing various, similar to Mai, various initiatives working on health equity, mostly in the nonprofit NGO space as well as academic institutions. But I think what I really want to highlight is how much of my identity has been shaped and is continuing to be shaped by the communities that I've had the privilege to grow up close to. When I was in high school, I started a project to raise money in rural Chiang Mai, in Tambon Chompu, Ampere Salapi, to raise money to allow for rural women to get access to mammogram screenings in the city center. And I can talk more. I'll be talking a little bit more about just lessons learned from just when I was like 14, 15, to working on a project in college on HIV/AIDS related stigma, also in rural Chiang Mai, and how a lot of my experiences working with communities has been shaped by trust. And that trust is really key to progress and to innovation. And the last thing I want to say is right now I am a PhD student in the US working on issues related to air pollution and climate change, all also informed by community members, community voices, working with farmers in northern Thailand to talk about ways to produce regenerative practices in agriculture. And very excited to be with you all today, and I'll pass the mic over to Pear.
Thank you, Kat. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Pear, and I was born and raised here in Bangkok, Thailand. And I got the opportunity to go study at New York University in global public health and sociology. And after I graduated, I spent the last 6 years of my career always been in the health tech industry. I got a job at a venture capital and accelerator firm in New York, where we oversaw more than 200 portfolio companies in the digital health space. And from there, I noticed that less than 5% of the companies were focusing on solving female pain points. That's when I discovered the femtech industry, and femtech stands for female technology. So it's any product or service that is solving a female specific pain point, that it can be broader than reproductive health as well. I knew back then that I wanted to focus and dedicate my career in the femtech industry. I was also going through my own hormonal issues as well, as many women do. And from there, I went to go work and moved to San Francisco, and I got a job at a fertility tracking startup. And we launched a wearable device, a hardware device that helps women time intercourse for conception by analyzing their cervical mucus. I also I led a community group of more than 1,000 women who were struggling with infertility and were struggling to conceive. And I got to really listen to the stories of these women. And I noticed that the overarching theme that all these women go through is that they felt a deep confusion, a sense of isolation and deep shame about their infertility issues, that something is broken with their bodies. And because when it comes to women's body, it is still very highly stigmatized, especially here in the global South. So when I moved back here during the pandemic, I continued to be in the femtech industry. I launched a platform called Vera to be a marketplace for women's health products that women can easily access tools and information about their own health. I also do workshops. I'm more leaning towards in-person workshop nowadays than online, but the workshops I teach are mainly geared towards helping young girls understand puberty and their menstrual cycles. And yeah, I've noticed that a lot of the times here in Thailand, the template that we use back in the US cannot be copy and pasted back here. So I had to learn a lot about the Thai ecosystem and how to grow as a startup. And I'll go through about all the challenges soon. I'll pass it over to Shad.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Saad. I was born and raised in Pakistan, moved out to California about 15 years ago or so, and have bounced around both for my academic and professional career across the country and globally as well. My background is more centered on data science and AI. Most of my research, most of my initial career was focused on doing research in the life science spaces and in the health record area. Initially, I was with DeepMind working on longitudinal genomic data before moving into more EHR-based work and applying LLMs on wearable data. More recently, I've started to look more into characterizing communities and lived environments and applying LLMs to multimodal data sets. And now work in a with a private organization in the payer space doing strategy for our health equity initiatives. Glad to be here. Shadrach, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, no. Hi, everyone. Fortunately, we could not be there, but greetings from the US, where I think almost the rest of the panel just came from Pear to Saad to, Mama, and then, of course, to Kelly, too. I went to the same undergrad as my went. We all went to the University of Pennsylvania. Before I went to Penn, I grew up in Ghana, spent all my life in Ghana. And then, as many of the panelists did, I came to the US also for college. My education has moved me around, just like Saad shared. I spent 4 years in the UK, doing my PhD, thinking about, public health, primary care, stuff like that. And then after my PhD, currently at the Yale School of Medicine, at Yale, finishing up my medical degree. Middle of clerkship, seeing patients, so that's very exciting. But seeing patients every day also gets me to think about how all of this, came to be. I grew up somewhere, and we'll share a bit of that. I grew up in the middle of, forest nowhere in Ghana. If any of you have ever been to Ghana, about 8 hours out from Accra, the capital city, that's where I grew up in the Western region. So pretty simple, quiet life. Saw electricity when I was like 15. So a very different life, but I was very fortunate and blessed, had great parents. But growing up in a setting like that got me to think about how do we work with communities to actually ignite impact. And so that has formed a team and a big part of my life. When I went to Penn, graduating, I started a social enterprise called Coco 360. And the idea was fundamentally to, get us to think, how do you really get communities to do what they know is good for them? So how do we get communities to stick to social care programs, to community impact programs, right? When motivation and not logistics or money is really the challenge that we face. Those of us in behavioral science, we call that the intention to action gap. We've seen it a lot in medication adherence. It doesn't exist in social care adherence. So it's formed the base of my career. And now, after 10 years of evidence, a lot of research, a lot of success in Ghana with what we've done, we recently pivoted to scale all of that work using artificial intelligence and then technology to scale that work so that it can benefit more organizations beyond the success that we've achieved in Ghana. So I'm very excited, to join the panel and share a bit of our journey with you all as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Shadrach, and thanks again for being up at 2 or 3 a.m. your time. Very excited to get deeper into the conversation here with our incredible panelists. But before we do so, I'd love to get a pulse check of the room. So please put your hands up if yes, leave your hand down if no, and then give a little wave if you're unsure. So 3 questions. The first question, is anyone here working on a startup, venture, or campaign? Okay. Let's move on to the second question. Does anyone here have experience with AI or health tech? Okay, yep, some experience. I'm sure we're all subscribed to ChatGPT. And last question, and this is not a trick question. Do you feel like you have a clear understanding of what innovation means in global health? One person in the room does. So I think, this is a very complicated and interesting question, and one that's important for us as a group here to define as a core value as we're talking through what we think innovation means. And one thing that really struck me personally as we were preparing for our panelists here and really resonated with me is, as you've heard, everyone here comes from different backgrounds. We're all approaching innovation, health tech, and AI in different ways. But when you peel back the layers of the different approaches, I think what we have here in this group is a shared core value of what innovation means in global health. And Kelly, I know this has been a core part of your academic research. So, on behalf of us, I'd love to hear from your perspective. What makes an innovation truly impactful in global health? And what does innovation in global health mean to you?
Thanks so much for that really important question. I think I'm going to answer this in 5 parts, going deeper and deeper with each part. So on the surface, we all know this. When we hear the word innovation, we think about, ooh, that fancy, sexy thing that we need to have. It's this new idea, this new service, new product, whatever it is. And so that goes into my second point of almost like a snake eating its own tail. That innovation is that thing that you're constantly chasing. You're basically spending your life chasing new progress, chasing change. And we really see this, just to give an example, a personal example, in how my own family, my own mom, I was talking to her about this panel, and just joking with her that just the other day she called me to tell me that she's so excited about this seaweed powder that she puts in her water, and it's supposed to make her skin really supple and her eyes really bright. But the key thing about this seaweed powder is that it's from Japan. And wow, when you put a label on a product like made in Japan, made in Korea, made in the US, there's a lot of geopolitics involved with that label, but for a lot of people in Thailand, when you say something's made in Japan, it's wow, you have to have it. So that in itself is how innovation, to my third point, really mirrors privilege and power. When we think about new technology, innovation, initially it's expensive. Initially, we really place so much worth, so much trust, so much license on who gets to determine whether something's innovative, who gets to determine whether something's bold, who has the right to put that label. And once that label is put on this product, this service, wow, it changes everything. So just thinking about how we think and how we react to the word innovation, and how a lot of this insight has already been shared by the panelists here, and I'm super inspired by how they are living examples of what it means to not be a heropreneur. I'm using the word hero plus entrepreneur. There's this myth in tech or in AI innovation that it's one person's idea. But in reality, it takes a community to turn that idea into action, to create buy-in, and to really push for change. So, and the fourth point is, in all of our lived experiences on this panel, I think we really prioritize exactly that, lived experience. We prioritize stories, we prioritize lives from the community, and really centering the community inherently in any system that we're a part of. And then the last thing is this new buzzword that's been being thrown around, tequity, which is technology plus equity. And this is when we're using tech to really allow for health services to be more accessible to marginalized or otherwise disenfranchised communities. And we see this a lot in an increased consumption and popularity in at-home care, like at-home mental health counseling, at-home STI testing, a lot of these new products and services are really doing the work to decrease stigma associated with mental health, associated with STI testing. But the challenges still remain on who really gets access to these services and how we really need to make sure that our innovation is really, one, accessible, two, inexpensive, and three, truly at its core sensitive to cultural context and also people's socioeconomic backgrounds. Because if we don't take that into account, we will not be able to really innovate and really drive global health change.
Thanks, Kelly. Very well put, and really like the way that you broke down your insights into those 5 points. So as you may have already noticed today, we're intentionally using the language around failures a lot because we very much just want to be an open dialogue around some of the challenges and failures that we've learned from. So I'm happy to be the first to share that when I was at Harvard, a couple of friends and I from Thailand co-founded a social enterprise called, it was supposed to be a social accelerator for different organizations in Thailand. We put this through the Harvard Innovation Labs competition, and we won some funding for this. But less than a year later, this fell through. We ultimately failed because it was hard for us to find a feasible business operation model that balanced profit and purpose, and was something that became a deep learning lesson for me. And I know everyone here on the panelists with us has all experienced failures and challenges in their different ventures as well. So Saad, I'd love to hear from you. What challenges have you faced when trying to build up your venture, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, Mai, thanks for the question. I think what you just said around finding a balance between purpose and profit is extremely critical, especially when you're trying to impact a community or a population that is that might be disadvantaged, that might be low income or a minority community. So my venture was built around, is a digital health venture focused on remote patient monitoring and moving clinical and wearable data over to physicians to drive guideline decision, medical decision making. And we fell flat on our faces 3 months into our venture, building an extremely sophisticated machine learning application that was really geared towards the providers and not so much for the patient population that we wanted to focus on. Our patient population was centered on folks that were above 60, 65, folks that were low income, people that may not be digitally literate. So we quickly found out, 3 months into the development process that we need to figure out, are we building for the buyer or the end user, aka the community individual who's going to transmit the data? And we initially built it for the buyer, aka the hospitals and the providers that were giving us the money, but 4 or 5 months in, we're not providing any kind of metrics to them because the engagement level is so low because the end user is not using the product. What we did find through that discovery process was the lowest tech solution that we did build, which is a simple SMS tool to transmit vitals, had a near 100% engagement rate, day in and day out, and the AI ML component probably had the least engagement. And I say there's 2 takeaways there, right? The first one is you don't need, and I know this is harnessing AI technologies, but you may not necessarily need a robust AI solution for everything that you want to conquer. It could really be, if you pull up a matrix chart, figure out, a low-tech solution might be what a community needs or what your end user might need, right? That could have functionalities involving AI. So that was a key learning for us. And the second learning was, don't chase a funding, chase the problem, be very hyper focused on solving for the end user, not necessarily the person who's going to pay you the money. The power of computational, I guess, supremacy, if you will, is decreasing extremely rapidly. technology is going to continue to get better and better. So if you start trying to go after, let me use this advanced LLM tool to solve this problem, you're not going to succeed necessarily if that is your focus. And that was a challenge for us in the beginning, and something we had to really work around. But Shadrach, I know you've sort of done some work here as well in the entrepreneur space, so would love your input here.
Well, I think, Sad, you share some really interesting viewpoints about, thinking about how to adapt technology, particularly for the user. And I always share this story of how, as a fresh out of Penn graduate, just carried my bags, everything, and I'm like, I'm going to Ghana. I'm going to go change the world. That's how many of us, we tend to go at things. We're young, vibrant, energetic. The world is our oyster. We just want to take over, right? And if you're probably like, some energy, and a really high energy person like me, still like this at 3 a.m., then you just want to go and take over the whole community and do everything. And I had that experience, right? I graduated from Penn. They give me this big chunk, 150K. My name is like on everyone campus. And then my friends from Ghana, who are also Penn alumni at the time where we just graduated, we're like, yeah, we're going to Ghana. We're going to change the country and fix the things that the ministers don't want to do. Yeah, we're the new generation. And I'm from the community. So we get there, and now, mind you, the award is in its very first year, guys. So the university is expecting, and the funders are expecting, that we'll give them immediate feedback. It goes back to Sad's point about not chasing money, right? So we keep waiting. We just, 1 month into it, we keep going to the chiefs. Hey, we got 150K. We have our money ready. You promise you're going to give us land. We told the university we're going to put up a school and a health facility, and then set up the sustainability arm, right? Which was a farm. And the idea was really simple. If any of you love chocolate, then you probably may know what cocoa is, right? Cocoa is like the nearest sibling of coffee. And Ghana, if you know anything about Ghana for a long time was the first, leading exporter of cocoa until Ivory Coast took over and we went to second. So it's literally the country's second exporter, right behind gold. My community grows a lot of cocoa. My parents are cocoa growers. And so I grew up on the cocoa farm. So we had this, what we thought was a wonderful idea. We're going to build a school, community clinic, have a farm on the side. And then the community folks will work on the farm, and they'll use the farm revenues to keep the school and the health facility going. Obviously, to be able to do all of that, we needed land. We're being pledged to get 100 acres of land from the community leaders. And they stuck to their word. They gave us the land. Now, here is the thing I never knew, even though I'm from the community. The fact that the chiefs are giving you the community land doesn't automatically give you access and right to use the land. Why is that? It is because there are families that were living and feeding on that land before we went in. And even though the community and the chiefs has given us the land, even though I was born, raised, grew up in the community, and the landowners knew me as their own son, they were not willing to give it up. I mean, sometimes we'll be working and they will literally come chase us down with machetes. And my then younger, brain thought, man, these guys, what's wrong with them? We're just here to do something good. They don't want good stuff. There we go. I knew it. And that was my mindset. But I will never forget this. One night at 2 a.m., my mother wakes me up in the middle of the night, and she's like, say, I got to discuss something with you. And she sits me down, and then she goes, those family folks, they all know you. They love you from childhood. Now, here's the thing. They're not against you doing anything on the land. What they really want is acknowledgement and respect. They want you to come to them, sit down with them, have conversations with them, and talk to them and explain to them what your vision in the near term is, your long-term vision is, and how their legacies are going to be respected. And my dad came for my graduation in the US, and then he chimes in, he was sitting right there, he's like, do you remember when I came to the University of Pennsylvania? You people have every building named after somebody. It's the same thing. These guys also want recognition and respect. And that blew my mind, right? Because right there, my mother and my dad had, well, of course, engineered mainly by my mother, she's told me something that my Ivy League education had not taught me. So the next day, you bet, we met the community, we told the chiefs, we wanted to meet the landowners, we had a conversation with them. Until this date, our biggest advocates are the community leaders and the community landowners. The lesson from that for me, now, this story is of somebody who is not only from Ghana, but also from the community. So one thing I find very fascinating is, I don't know how people, there's a lot of organizations, and I see some of them, their logos on the screen. I don't know how they can come and easily adapt. I find it fascinating, but they're working. So probably what they're doing is working. But for me, that was a bigger lesson in effective community engagement, and literally defined the rest of my course of my career. I literally committed, my medical career, everything to community health, community care. How do we get communities to really not just buy in, but be able to use whatever programs that we develop? We tend to have a challenge of thinking that availability or funding is naturally equal to utilization. No, there's a gap there. And that relies on a lot of community trust, a lot of community motivation, a lot of social cohesion, and really a lot of stuff that comes from simply respecting communities. It was a hard lesson, but one that, I took to heart and thankfully learned from it, and has defined very well the rest of my career and who I am. Yeah.
Thanks, Shadrach. I think that resonates with a lot of the experience I've heard as well. I think earlier, Per, you were talking about how, having that experience and seeing those business models and that ecosystem in the US, and then moving back to Thailand and initially assuming that some of that could be brought, to the Thai ecosystem and market, was something that you very much had to navigate and learn from. So I'd love to hear more from your experiences and those challenges.
Oh, for sure. We have a challenges for days, but we do have a unique set of challenges when moving back to Thailand and having to learn the Thai ecosystem, especially as a young female founder in Thailand. We have a deep respect for elders. So when I go pitch to investors or just any adults in general, first of all, they call me like Nong. They regard me as Nong, which I guess in English it means like young one. So already there's this hierarchy in age. And also, I always get this question is like, well, isn't women's health, well, like that's great, but isn't women's health a niche market? Meaning that, oh, it's such a small market. Are you really going to go for this? Are you going to dedicate your life to this? And I always have a set list of statistics that I share, which is that, well, 50%, more than 50% of the world population is made out of women, and that we make 80% of healthcare and household decisions. Yet women do live longer than men, but we spend 25 more years in poor health overall on average. And when it comes to medicine and healthcare, to get the same treatment, the same diagnosis for the same condition, it takes us 4 years longer to get it on average. And so I have all these statistics. Oh, another good one is that for every study done on PMS, which stands for premenstrual syndrome, there are 5 times more studies done on erectile dysfunction. Yet PMS affects more than 90% of women around the world. I feel really lucky today that I'm not near my period, so I can come out here and be quite confidently speaking on stage. But PMS does affect women for the 2 weeks before their period, the 1 week during their period, and it affects their cognition, their ability to focus, their mental health, their depression, their breast tenderness, their menstrual cramp, just overall discomfort and pain. And no one has really come out with an effective natural solution to this that we can all go for. So yeah, as I spread this education and awareness through my platform here, I also doubt how applicable all this research is to women living in Thailand, because a lot of the studies are done on women in the global north. Uh, Most of you probably know that women were only included in clinical trials in the 1993 in the US. And I don't know what the law here is for clinical trials, but I'm assuming, I feel dubious to be applying all the information that we learn to women here because our lifestyle and environment is so different. So I do a lot of research, I listen to a lot of women, and that's the key here. I think we all kind of, the community trust that we need to build. Another problem that I see is that censorship around women's body all over the world, online, in advertising, just really prohibits and blocks our growth as companies, as early stage startups. Trying to do any online advertising or education campaigns around menstrual hygiene, cervical cancer, or anything around women's bodies often gets flagged and censored. Last year, we had our Meta account banned twice, and that really affected our growth. And so, yeah, I can keep going, but I'll stop here. Pass it over back to Mai.
Thanks, Pear. And speaking about centering community voices, and I think that's been something that's been a key theme today. I know, Kelly, part of your work is using health tech platforms to really elevate community stories, and you've worked in different populations in Thailand and outside. And I know you've faced some big challenges in doing so as well. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely, happy to share. I think I'm just echoing our fellow panelists here as they've very eloquently put, progress can only be made at the speed of trust. And this really came through when I was in college, designing a study looking at HIV/AIDS related stigma in rural areas in Chiang Mai. So many people hesitated opening up until they knew they could trust me. Even though I grew up in the same area, used the same community facilities as them, I was still an outsider. And so just really proving to them that I was there for them and just showing up made all the difference and allowed really meaningful conversations to be started around stigma related to HIV/AIDS. Even back in high school when I was 14, 15 years old, I and my classmates created an initiative to raise money to allow for rural women to have the opportunity to go into the city to get mammogram screenings. And we raised enough money for the first 50 women in, again, rural Chiang Mai to go into the city. But on the day that we opened the sign-up sheet, put it in like the community center, no one signed up. And I remember saying to my mom, talking to my neighbor, what? Like, what? Why? Why is no one signing up? And my neighbor said, they're scared. They don't know what a mammogram screening looks like. They don't know what a mammogram screening entails. Is it gonna hurt? Is it gonna be painful? So just really making sure that I learned the lesson here early on that we can't do anything without actually hearing stories from the community and really respecting and honoring their voice and their perspectives. And in the health tech lingo, this is like honoring the end user, honoring the community member. I think we're all sharing that same commonality. I think the last thing that I will mention is just how often in global health, the people who have the most decision-making power are often funders or people who just hold the purse strings. So if anyone in the crowd is a funder, or if anyone in the crowd has any sway when it comes to really moving the needle on change, it's for those people who have decision-making power to share that power with community members. allow for them to not just have a seat at the table, but truly, sincerely respecting their input, that will really allow for sustainable change in communities.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you all so much for sharing your learnings and your the learnings that you had from both your challenges and your failures. I think there's so much insight and wisdom that comes from that. Just a note to the audience, this is our last round of scripted questions coming up, so please feel free to brainstorm for the next part, which is our Q&A. But to finish off, want to end this part here really thinking about the future of your work, the future of what you all think as youth leaders is needed to really harness technologies and AI in a way that is equitable, accessible, and sustainable. So I'd love to finish our conversation looking forward. And Per, you and I have both had very heated, passionate discussions about women's health. When I was working in the US with women's research, I was astounded at the lack of research on menopause, which, God willing, if we're blessed and lucky enough to live long enough, that's something that most of us will go through. And yet there's very little to zero research on the impacts of menopause on women and women's health. I know you and I have spoken a lot about research and women's research, so I'd love to hear from your perspective the future of women's health tech in Thailand and what you think is needed.
Oh, yeah, we've geeked out a lot about this. And I also shared with you that like 4 years ago when I was in San Francisco, I went to a menopause institute, and they just launched the institute to answer the question, why do humans go through menopause, which we still don't know today why. But yeah, there's so much lack of research that's needed in women's health in all aspects, from menarche to menopause, and especially here in Thailand, I'm not sure if there's not a lot of players here. There's not a lot of startups or investment or research around women's health, and I think we need help in all aspects, because I'm also concerned that like when there's not enough research on female-specific conditions, that when we input this data into AI algorithm, how much of it causes the output to be biased. And I don't use a lot of AI in my work, but me and my friends and my community, we all use ChatGPT, and we do use it like Google is asking health-related questions. And as you know, women's health is still quite taboo, and we often resort to asking questions on Mr. Google. And so ChatGPT has given really biased recommendations for women-specific conditions. And if we keep going at this rate, I think it is pretty harmful for women to be seeking AI-generated answers to their own conditions. So I do want to see more investment, more listening, and more research in women's health overall, from philanthropy to digital spaces to venture capital. I think it's a time we put women at the frontier of our investments.
Thanks, Per. And Saad, I know AI is something that you do a lot in your work. So I'd love to hear from you what you see as the future of AI infrastructure and how you think we can make it equitable.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, as you might have heard from Shadrick, Per, and Kelly, Mai herself too, is there's 4 themes that are sort of emerging across all of this, the need for 4 themes. The first is co-design, right? Making sure whatever product or project that you're undertaking should have a co-development process, making sure the access is equitable to the product and to the data, ensuring that there's transparency across the entire value chain, and finally making sure that there's capacity building and knowledge sharing in the work that you're doing. I've had the privilege of working as a machine learning research engineer for both DeepMind and OpenAI for various use cases, and I was fortunate enough to be with them, 2014, 2015, when they were still in that nonprofit phase. But one of the things that I noticed, and I think let me take a pause and step back. I think about the worry that I have about AI right now is is the same concern that I have with clinical trials. Historically, these studies have been done on, as Pear has mentioned, studies have predominantly been done on white men, and a lot of the medicine that has been generated and developed over the last, X amount of years are really targeted on the clinical parameters of one specific population. And when I was doing genomic research, at least gene expression work, and we were looking at transplant rejections, or we were looking at propensity scoring, the data sets that we were working with were 60 to 70% white men. And we're building models off of these, and they tend to be, and again, no offense to white men, I apologize, but just, you start to create, biases from the get-go. And I worry about this as we start using, models like ChatGPT or other, open source models that are coming out. That said, when we think about applying AI in health equity, and then this is for, youth tech, the things that we should look out for is, making sure that we clearly define the use case and the problem. Why is AI the solution if you need AI? Most things still require just logics. And really, the value proposition isn't in my opinion, the AI, it's in the workflow itself. And I think that's what our keynote speaker mentioned, was making sure you have a really good workflow that, is augmented or enhanced or supported by AI, not having AI be the central focus of your innovation. Making sure you partner with stakeholders that give you the access input to the population, to the data that you need. Making sure that you're within that stakeholder, making sure you're doing capacity building and knowledge sharing. Looking at leveraging diverse and representative data for your population. The work that I might be doing in the States may not necessarily reflect the work and the needs that are reflected here in Thailand or in Rwanda, for example, right? And finally, thinking about all of this as you're part of a builder ecosystem, you're innovating, you're an entrepreneur, you're bringing innovation to your community, right? Oftentimes you'll be faced with the fact, especially in developing countries, that there may not be governance, right? There may not be stakeholder or governance engagement or enough information around it. So you might end up being some of those people that are shaping those policies, or at least informing those policies for the future. So as you continue to build in this space, just make sure that you're aware that you're wearing two hats at the same time, not just innovating in your community, but also perhaps setting guidance for what should be done or what can be done to improve these solutions. A good use case, I think, what Pear said earlier was she was getting shadow banned from Meta's from her social media accounts from Meta, determining that her posts were in violation of rules. I mean, a lot of these shadow bans are AI-driven models that have been trained on certain components, right? That seem to think, a woman's, body or a woman's parts are obscene, and they're classically, ML trained to filter those out. I mean, there's a classic use case of bias right there. I mean, there's other, functions that you could think about, but making sure you're really, thinking about this from the ground up is very important. But I'll pause here. A bit rambling now.
Not at all. Thanks, Saad. I think that was a powerful example of thinking about Meta and the shadow banning algorithm that we see on more than just women's body, but also on political issues actually being trained through algorithms. Shadrach, how about you? I know we've spoken a lot about you thinking about the role of AI and the private sector in global health and your future involvement in it. What are your thoughts on why AI is important for global health and the role of the private sector moving forward?
Oh, yeah, good question, Mama. I think I echo, what my colleagues have shared earlier. When I think about AI, I would admit I am one of probably the people that at first you talked to me about AI, I always saw everything as, ooh, it's like, it's just really a bad thing. But as I evolved and we worked with communities, interestingly, I began to think there are tools, pretty good tools. As with everything, began to see AI as a wonderful tool, depending on who is using it and how it is being used, like Sad has shared. Began to see the private sector also in the same way. And, that's a lesson that actually, given that we're here, for me, it's a good way to pay homage to somebody that informed a big part of my career. Obviously he's not with us. I think a lot of people in the room would know how single-handedly one man transformed a generation to care about global health and impact so much, at least for me. And it was the late Paul Farmer, Dr. Paul Farmer. And I was very so fortunate to meet Paul at one of the Clinton Global Initiative events in New York and gave a wonderful session. And one of the things that Paul shared with me was, I asked him a question, Paul, if you could go back, what could you change? He said, well, I wouldn't change anything except I'll begin to think of how can we galvanize more people to widen the impact? How can we galvanize more people to accelerate the change that we seek to see in the world? And that's something that stuck with me. And so when I think about how now we use AI in our work, right? When we started in Ghana, we put up a wonderful model where we told community members, for the very first time, we told community members that, if you want to benefit from the school and your children to benefit from the tuition, if you want your family to benefit from the clinics and its incentives, you have to work on the farm, and we're going to use the farm revenues to, sustain what we were doing. And at that point, it was very much this brilliant incentive, model that the Bamboo School, in Thailand is wonderfully using that, a wonderful speaker shared earlier about. But what we realized was that a lot of the community members, they were, participating very strongly in the community programs that we had at the clinic. But when it came to education, attending PTA meetings, anything that got to do with the social determinants, right? The show up was not so good. And that's when we began to think of, oh, wait, it was not enough for us to have this. How do you actually engage people in it? We had created a program and a way to incentivize people to bring them, but there was still very strong drop-off rates. We looked at the data and we weren't alone. The peer-reviewed evidence says that on average, 1 in 3 people who are engaged in community-based programs, community impact programs, they don't stick with it. Most of them drop out. And so that became something that we began to think about. And thankfully, as we began to think about how to solve that challenge, artificial intelligence came to the fore, right? We were able to build technology, leverage all those years of experience of engaging communities, getting communities to stick with programs. And what artificial intelligence allowed us to be able to do is it helps us to be able to, sort of send nudges and reminders to, community members who are involved in the program. It helps us to be able to identify who are those who are at risk for dropping off, who are those who are still performing, and why are they performing? So we're able to study all these patterns and better serve the community. We're able to reach out to those who are dropping off without necessarily having to do long months of longitudinal research studies. And that's something that's been very profound to the work that we do. And, for me, that's a very nice segue when I think about the private sector similarly. When we started we started in one community. Now we're in 8 communities in Ghana, close to 35,000 community members with the model that we started. When we began to have this, success, a lot of the communities we work in are cocoa growing communities. So we started having cocoa companies come to us and say, look, Shadrach, most of the farmers and the community members you're working with, like your parents, they are important to us. They are in our value chain. It is very important to us that they are also healthy. Because when they're healthy, they work on the farm and the whole production cycle stays. Everybody wins. So how do we get them to be more healthy? We are already funding a lot of corporate social responsibility programs. But we see the success, the communities you work in tell us about it. Can we scale this into a technological platform, into more communities beyond Ghana? How do we build your success and leverage it into technology and partner with you to get it to the cocoa growing communities, in East Asia, in Southern America, in Latin America, in all of these wonderful places? And, we're beginning to see some results as we begin to scale up. And it's been a wonderful partnership. Of course, no partnership is always going to be perfect. And that humility and that reminder, I think for me, is able to stay. Once, like I share with our team, number one, why did we start this? Who are we doing it for? And what legacy do we want to live when we get out of this place? So that's, for me, the lessons I keep with me. I still keep it with me when I'm on the wards meeting patients. That sense of listening, that sense of valuing communities, and that sense of understanding that this is a partnership, a collaboration, and not a competition. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point, talking about partnerships and thinking about the widespread implications of AI and how understanding it, managing it, ensuring that it's equitable is going to take partnerships across different sectors. And so before we break into Q&A, love to just finish with you, Kelly. I know you're working deeply in academia right now, thinking about these issues in global health and climate change. So I'd love to hear from you what you think the role of academia is in navigating the rise of AI in global health.
Thank you for that question. When I was thinking about how to answer this question, I went back to a quote that I really love, and that is that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And this quote stuck with me because it's true. There's pockets in society where privilege and power allow access to some things, and other pockets where that's not the case. And I would say academia and global health, historically, this has been disciplines that have caused a lot of harm across the globe. Yes, there have been a lot of success stories that have come out of this discipline. But that said, we do have to acknowledge the harms that colonial and neo-colonial legacies have in the history of medicine and the history of health. And so I think if academia can do one thing, it, number one, should take a step back and really refocus on who is most important when it comes to producing good research, producing work that really is going to drive change. I think about this question a lot as someone who is pursuing my PhD and hopes to maybe someday be a professor. Who am I working for? Who am I doing this work for? Because at the end of the day, it's not for my university, it's for the people who make up my community. So I think in tandem to that is ethics, that there's been a lot of talk around AI and what it can do for us. The amazing short film earlier this morning really hit this point home, that there really needs to be more investment in ethics and AI, more research on this topic, and also related to the environmental footprint of AI. I feel like we don't really talk about that often. What happens when someone opens their phone and uses ChatGPT? What is the water usage behind that? What is the energy consumption as a result of millions of people using ChatGPT at once? And I think the last thing I'll mention is hearkening to Kun Mishai's incredible keynote was technology at the end of the day, the most powerful technology is the people, is the community. And so if we don't center that, we will not be able to drive the change we wish to see.
Thanks, Kelly. And thanks everyone so much for sharing your different stories and perspectives. We're now going to break out into Q&A. I think we have time for one or two questions. Are there any questions from the audience today? I think you can come up to the microphone here if you feel comfortable.
Hi, I'm Meng Fei from UNAIDS, and I'm also a PhD student in health communication at the University of Hong Kong. So I'm very inspired, actually. I'm very inspired by Pear as a young woman myself. So I actually got two questions, but one specifically for Pear is that well, at UNAIDS, we also want to advocate more for the young people and also for women. So based on your experience, what's the most effective way to reach to them and create that safe and empowering digital space for young people and also especially for women? And I got another question because my research is focused on how social media can reduce HIV stigma. So we all know that we had the tools to end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. But many people living with HIV still face significant stigma. So how do you see the AI or technology in general playing the role in reducing stigma? Yeah, that's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I will give you my best answer from my experience, but for women, it's like a lot of the stuff that, are you working in health tech, like in women's health as well?
No, I actually work for UNAIDS.
Okay. I think when there's a lot of stigma, so to break that, it's like having the ability to be anonymous, to be discreet, or to have private community groups, whether that's just a simple WhatsApp group or Facebook group where women can talk and share stories, or if there's an idol or a role model who can come out and share their story, that is really influential as well, that I've seen. So having like a celebrity, a pop star come out to share their story, or to create on-ground events, like in-person events. But from what I've noticed is that from our perspective, like when we sell at markets, our own events, people are more likely to come talk to me rather than buy online, because in our household, like they might be living with their family members, they might be living with their parents, and they don't want to, buy, like I sell lubricants. They don't want to buy lubricants and ship it back home and have their mom open up their package, So there should be ability to be discreet and anonymous, and also be able to feel like even if they share their story, they're safe. So having that boundary, consent setting in the beginning when you have a community group really helps set the tone for the whole group to be respectful, and to have community guidelines is really helpful. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And I think you also had a second question around HIV advocacy on social media. Kelly, do you want to take this? And then Saad and Shadrick, feel free to chip in.
I think that's a great question. I thought back to just Kunmishai's work and what he's talked about in terms of how he's worked to address stigma, and I feel like it mirrors my own just experiences working with community members living with HIV, and that is to talk about it, to share stories, and to really, like the Cabbages and Condoms restaurant, really put it in front of people's faces. That's a family planning example, but the same can be done for AIDS as well, HIV AIDS. And I know your question talked more specifically about how AI can address the issue. I think first, similar to what Saad shared earlier, that there's inherent biases built into AI that may also make the model already inherently stigmatizing against certain groups, whether it be marginalized groups like people living with HIV, or women, or LGBT populations. And so I think the first step before AI can even be used to reduce stigma is to reduce stigma within AI itself. So really making sure that we train our algorithms, train our models on material that is ethically sound before it can be used to drive change to reduce stigma. And I think just going alongside of that, sharing stories. I think we've talked a lot about this on the panel. Just sharing lived experience, I think, is really key to making any issue part of the public narrative and not shying away from the issue. I know I talked earlier about how there's a lot of at-home testing kits, like STI testing at home mental health counseling, and these are all mental health, STI testing, really high stigma issues. And even though you're doing it at home, that doesn't erase the stigma just because you're doing it at home. So it has to become part of the public narrative as well. So I think sharing stories would help address that. But I'll pass it over to Saad or Shadrach if you have additional thoughts.
I have no knowledge about this, but what I can tell you is if your research is on utilization of social media, I love thinking about networks. And I'm a big proponent of building density in networks. So a good strategy to look at, improving or getting engagement and reducing stigma ultimately is to build density in the network that you want to target. So if it's a specific community, you characterize a community you want to focus on. If it's women, if it's a region, if it's the type of parameters that you are focused on. Build density around social media campaigns, and then have a multimodal approach to what Bear said, have community events in those same parameters, and then maybe use some other, say influencers or whatever else you might want to look at. But the idea is, the more you build density in a specific network, the more edges you start to, create. That's how things become viral. That's how things become more, sort of have a snowball effect, right? Instead of parsing out everything across the network and sending out, a social media campaign to 20,000 people, get hyper-focused on one and build density from there, and then let it, have a ripple effect to other areas. And you can actually measure and quantify those things. Again, I don't know anything about this space, but yeah.
Thanks, Saad. Thank you for your question. I think we also have another question here. Jesse?
Yes, we have a question. Thank you, Mai. My name's Jesse Bump. I'm at the Harvard School of Public Health. And I have two questions, if it's okay. The first one is for Shadrach, and I'm a farm boy like you. And your story reminds me of, like, I went to college and come back to the community, and, there's a lot of tension. So, I went to school in Massachusetts, so people would say, oh, went down there to study, came back a masshole, right? Because you have these ideas that just don't quite fit. So I wanted to ask you, like, what kind of insults did you get? What kind of resistance was there?
No, that's a good question. I love it. Let me tip my hat off to another farm boy. It's different. Yeah, it was kind of wild. I actually, though, I remember my first week in the village. I had, my uncle who was the village, who still is the village, herbal priest. And the way my family line was, I was supposed to be the next in line to be the community healer in the village, right? My grandfather did that. So if any of you is sick and you want to know how to use herbs, I got you. I can use that. And so obviously I ended up as a healer, but a different kind of healer, right? I'm here studying medicine. But my uncle sees me and he's like, yo, you went back to America and studied all of that, and you were so stupid enough to think that there's something to be made and to be done here. Okay, we are all here. We will see what use will become of you. It is only a matter of time that you realize that you are stupid, or as me, if not even more stupid than I am. And so, in many ways, he really meant it. In another way, I'm not too sure if he meant it. I still can't decipher his intention. He will have to be the one to tell me. But it was, I think, in the initial stages, I like to take those personally. There was that insult. There were other people that said, "Look, you think you know it all," and their insult was actually right? So some of them were very hard on me. And now looking back, of course, at the time, I took it personal. Like, it was very hurtful to hear that, because I think, I have all this education. But I think over time, when I reflect, of course, hindsight is 2020. I now see it as tough love. It very much helped to shape who I am. And at the end of the day, I realized these people brought me into the world. They gave so much to me for me to be who I am today. And yeah, they may have malice, but for the most part, I imagine that everything certainly comes from a place of love. Yeah, but it's certainly, I cannot connect the Ghanaian experience to the Massachusetts experience, but I can certainly say that it was not easy reintegrating back. It took some time, and that's why I have so much, I don't know, I have enormous respect for people, my American colleagues, or people from other settings who choose to do global health or impact work in other settings that are not their background. I just even cannot fathom it. Some of our own staff members come from other communities that are not Ghanaian, come to live in the community, serve, and they do very well. I'm amazed. But hopefully that helped us answer some of your questions. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. My other question was for Per, and what you're doing is fighting patriarchy, and I really admire that. And if there's a way I could support you, just let me know. But here's my question. The exercise of patriarchy has probably done nothing more powerful than design an economic system that rewards the kind of work men do. And there's lots of alternatives, right? So you could imagine a system that pays for healthcare, for child rearing. So everyone is born with some allowance, and when they're 18, the women get to collect some portion of that according to how much work happened. So just to illustrate the sort of things that could happen, but your business has to operate in the economic environment that's there, and by so operating, just can't help but strengthen it. That's just the world we live in. So what I wanted to ask is, if you could imagine a way to start moving in a better direction. It's not that you can take it down right away, but how did you start moving in a better way? Thank you.
It's a great question, which I think about all the time. But yeah, what sucks about working all the time, your brain as a founder of any company, you're thinking about it all the time, maybe, is that it does not, is that I've just been burnt out so often. And I have an existential crisis because I'm helping empower women to take control of their reproductive health, understand their menstrual cycle, yet I am deregulating my own menstrual cycle and causing my own struggles with reproductive health. And so I try to lead by example by taking care of my own health as a employer and taking care of the health of my employees. I have a small team, so we try to grow lean and try to make sure that everyone in the team feels like they can take rest days if they have menstrual pain or mental health issues. So it's just leading by example. I wouldn't say I'm the gold standard at all, but having to kind of change the work culture that we've been having for decades and centuries, and also when it comes to women's health, like after moving back here, I noticed that a lot of healing modalities in Thai traditional medicine, in Chinese medicine, works really well. And I've always been like research backed, clinical trials, evidence-based, but if it works, it works. So like listening to the stories of people who have done different types of medicine and healing modalities and trying to take a more holistic approach and being more kind and understanding to one another, because we can't work as machines all the time. Our hormones are changing every day as women, as people with menstrual cycles. So just being how do we utilize those changing hormones as a superpower instead of something to keep us locked down is what I teach in the workshop for the young girls. So hopefully that makes some impact in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pear. And I think we have time for one more question. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, and thanks for, it's so exciting to be at a youth edition. I appreciate that opportunity and energy. My name's Carolyn Wallace from Vic Health in Australia. My question is, or my observation is, we all get older. You can see I'm on that path as well. You will age out of being young and youthful at some stage. You're probably digital natives. My question is, what are any of you doing to work with or bring on or train that next generation who have also got their own, they're born into a tech world? How are you working with that new generation?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Saad, do you want to take this one? I know, I mean, we went to grad school together and you were a mentor to so many folks, and, you know, continue to be in the work that you do in the health tech space. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So Mama and I went to grad school together, and you know, part of what I've noticed, and even in the research that I've noticed, is that there seems to be a digital gap. It's a growing gap between underserved communities and people of color in how they understand what health technology is, or technology is in general. And a lot of the work that at least I've been doing, and that I was doing previously, is setting up programs. One of which I'm actually doing right now in California is a high school to college and grad school education program. So it's focused on getting lived experience while you're in high school across the healthcare ecosystem, specifically as it ties to both translational medicine and technology. So there's a cool initiative in Sacramento where we have students who are 13, 14, 12 years of age, and up to their senior year in high school, 17, 18, where as they're going through their high school years, they're also concurrently doing mini college and mini med school on the weekends, and getting exposure to real world settings around what it means to be a physician, what it means to be a researcher, what it means to be a technologist, and having that entire arc centered around that. And I think this is an innovative program that really, one, is meant to inspire younger generations to say, hey, I can see a future beyond just graduating high school. A lot of these individuals, would end up either not going to college afterwards or dropping out and out of community college a year or two later because they may not see the connection between what they're learning in high school and what it means to be an adult in a tech-enabled world, right? So programs like these are very, very important, making sure they get real-world exposure, practical applications of the work that they're doing. But Shadrach, if you have any thoughts, anyone else might have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about mentorship, so I've had the past, almost about the past 8 years, mentoring scholars in the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program. And it's something that's dear to my heart. I still do it, for younger Ghanaians and younger Africans. And sometimes people from my undergrad or even the grad schools I've been to who reach out that they want to do something that, I've been able to do. And my encouragement, it differs, it's on a case-by-case basis. But whatever I share, I try to give young people a framework in terms of how they should see things and share a bit of my journey. Try not to discourage them too much, but generally my approach has been to tell folks, hey, I know our world is not perfect, but it is human beings who made it imperfect. And it will be human beings who work harder, as many are working harder, to try to make it a bit more perfect. Or, like the Partners in Health documentary will say, bend the act, towards justice. And there are some mentees I've never met in person. And I still do that because it's important. And actually, it's a good example because personally, I benefited. I don't know if he's in the room. When I went to Cambridge for my PhD, every supervisor I had said, Shadrach, you remind me so much of this amazing physician from Thailand called Dr. Viraj. You should look him up. So everybody emailed me a paper to read about Dr. Viraj, and he will have to pardon me because I could never pronounce his last name. But I read about him and I'm like, oh my God, this man is a genius. Like, what I think currently he served as senior advisor, but he helped to craft, things around, health policy assessment, the health assessment, health financing, all of that. And it really informed my career. And so the way I like to think about mentorship is that if we do get the chance to interact with people directly in our generation, great. But what I've also learned, just as my experience with Viraj has been, I've never met him in person, is that yet I still, study closely from afar. I read all his manuscript. I watch almost every video he will sit on the panel and talk about. It reminds me there are also probably young people who are watching. We're mentoring silently. And so our actions and inactions also do matter. That's a huge responsibility, but I think it's quite a good responsibility to have. Yeah.
Thank you, Shadrach. And so I think we're at time now, but I wanted to say a big thank you to the panelists here. It's always incredible to talk to you and learn from you all. Thank you, Shadrach, for joining online. Thank you, Kelly, Pear, and Saad for being here. And also thank you to everyone so much in the room for sharing your time and space with us today. So as a final reminder, there will be a QR code for everyone to please scan and provide feedback, and we look forward to more conversations. Thank you.